Out of 2 million new virus tests taken in Beijing, only 2 of them came back positive. That's amid more reports of people suddenly collapsing in public, this time in Shanghai. Hundreds of thousands in China are stuck inside their homes. Many are now running out of food, as they're not even allowed out to buy groceries. A Trump-era policy called the Clean Network has been removed from the State Department's website. The initiative aims to block Beijing from getting its hands on critical U.S. data and network access. 2 more China policy-related sections were also removed. And President Biden agrees with his predecessor that the Chinese Communist Party has committed genocide against the Uyghur Muslim minority. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. First, an update on the pandemic in China. About 2 million people in Beijing took virus tests last week. That's about 1/10 of the city's population. All of them come from Beijing's 2 downtown districts. That's where most of China's federal agencies operate. The area includes Shanghai, where Chinese Communist Party head Xi Jinping lives and works. Test results released over the weekend showed only 1 person out of the 2 million tested was confirmed positive. But China's official results may not prove accurate. The data comes amid allegations that Chinese-made test kits have a low accuracy rate. The regime is also widely thought to be severely underreporting its virus numbers. According to local media reports, the person whose results came back positive had already been sickened by the virus last August and later recovered. We can't independently verify this information, but similar reports from other countries may shed light on the situation. In a number of other countries, patients who had already been infected with the virus later caught it again, this time coming into contact with a different strain. Some of them developed severe symptoms and died. This may indicate that recovering from the virus once doesn't necessarily grant immunity from the disease. In China's largest city, Shanghai, many people have been spotted collapsing onto the ground recently. This as authorities there continue to cover up the outbreak.
Online video taken Sunday shows China's Putuo Central Hospital in Shanghai limiting the number of patients entering and leaving the facility. That's due to confirmed CCP virus patients there. But authorities didn't publicly announce the policy. Locals in Baoshan district broke news of new lockdown measures on Friday. In one coffee shop, customers reported seeing workers in charge of local pandemic prevention. The workers reportedly asked the shop owner to seal the door, preventing people from entering or leaving the building. Subway workers also told our sister media, the Epoch Times, about another situation, saying they had spotted people suddenly collapsing in public while waiting on subway platforms and riding in trains. They noted both elderly and young people were involved. The claims come as similar reports appear across China. According to another citizen, a woman also collapsed inside a pharmacy on Thursday while buying fever medicine. It's impossible to confirm whether the incidents were caused by virus infection. Local Chinese media have steered clear of publicizing the stories, but the timing of the events has sparked questions. It's just 2 weeks after the virus situation in northern China took a turn for the worse.
A city of around 500,000 in northern China is now facing a food crisis, not because of a lack of supply, but because of government lockdowns. NTD's Juliet Song has the details.
Hundreds of thousands of residents in northeast China are facing a food crisis, this as they're trapped inside their homes. One resident there says she only has a little food left. To protect her identity, we gave her a pseudonym and distorted her voice.
I've run out of flour and only have a little bit of rice left.
Liang lives in a city called Tonghua in northeast China. Local authorities there put residents under strict lockdown orders after reports of new CCP virus cases. Locals aren't allowed to go out, even to buy groceries. Liang says officials glue paper on residents' doors to seal them shut, but for those who do make it outside,
police would arrest you once you leave your home. So who would dare to go downstairs under these conditions?
Authorities said earlier that community workers would deliver groceries to residents. But according to locals,
no one sends us anything.
To sniff out rule breakers, authorities offer rewards up to nearly $800 for information on violators. Liang says many of her local friends are facing similar food shortages. She says she doesn't oppose lockdown measures, but thinks the regime went to extremes.
It'd be nice if authorities allow even just one person to go out and get food every day. Not allowing people to go out is just, we don't have much food left.
Some local residents took to social media to call for help, but many of their comments have since been removed. Of the few that are left, one comes from a resident that's now living in the south. He wrote he couldn't fall asleep after seeing other distressed comments online, and that he knows his mother, aunt, and uncle haven't received any vegetable deliveries from community workers. The city's deputy mayor apologized last Sunday, saying authorities have organized over 800 volunteers to deliver groceries. Since then, some residents have posted videos online showing the deliveries, but others raise concerns over whether the aid will be enough. Tonghua City is home to at least 500,000 people. Juliet Song, NTD News.
Chinese citizens have been forced to get creative under the country's strict lockdown measures. A video posted online shows how one person found an unusual way to walk his dog. Dozens of Chinese cities and districts are under lockdown. But unlike in other countries, citizens aren't allowed outside for daily exercise and other essentials. The harsh restrictions have left pet owners in a tricky situation. A video posted on social media shows one person's solution. A homemade leash was used to walk the dog, while the owner remained inside a fourth-floor apartment. Some netizens question how the leash was attached to the dog if the owner remained inside. The video gives no explanation. Another video going viral online shows a dog hoisted down and up so that it could use the bathroom outside, as it was used to doing it inside. This happened over the weekend in Suihua City in northeastern Heilongjiang province. As the dog breathed in fresh air for a short moment, its owners on the 8th floor were locked in due to the CCP virus. Now we turn to another virus, this one native to pigs. 2 new strains of African swine fever have emerged in China. Over 1,000 pigs have been infected. The swine fever variants were detected in Chinese pig farms. Industry insiders say the outbreak could be due to unlicensed vaccines. China is the world's largest pork producer. The news comes as the country battles a new surge of CCP virus cases. China's Ministry of Agriculture said on Thursday the swine fever outbreak struck several farms in China's Guangdong province. It's a coastal province located in southeast China and borders Hong Kong and Macau. The 2 new strains are reportedly missing 1 or 2 key genes normally found in the virus. The same signature has also been seen in failed vaccine attempts, from when Chinese researchers tried to modify the virus to develop a new vaccine. It's not confirmed whether the new strains came from failed vaccine attempts. The new virus strains don't kill pigs, but they can reduce the number of healthy piglets born. Chinese authorities pointed out African swine fever has been a problem in China since 2018. 200 million pigs died or were slaughtered that year because of the disease, wiping out half of China's pig herd. Pork prices have soared as a result. Last year, the price of pork increased by 50% year on year. China's severe flood season last year made the situation even worse. According to local media reports, dozens of African swine fever clusters popped up across the country. Now we turn to a missing link on the State Department website. The Biden administration has archived the webpage of a Trump-era policy. The policy prevents Beijing from getting its hands on critical U.S. data and networks. The U.S. State Department under the Trump administration launched the policy last year. It's called the Clean Network Initiative. The policy does several things. It kicks Chinese companies out of 5G networks that the U.S. is connected to. It prevents the CCP from getting intelligence from undersea cables. It removes Chinese apps from U.S. mobile app stores. It also prevents Chinese cloud services from storing data of American citizens and businesses. It's unclear if the new administration is archiving the policy by archiving the page. NTD reached out to the State Department for comment, but didn't get a response before airtime. One can still find the page on the archived website, but top Google search results only lead to the old missing link. And the Clean Network Initiative isn't the only Trump-era policy that the new administration seems to be archiving. One day after Biden's inauguration, 2 other China policy-related sections were also found to have been removed from the State Department's website. The 2 sections are titled the China Challenge and 5G Security. Before its removal, the China Challenge section described the CCP as the central threat of our times, adding that the regime undermines other nations to achieve dominance over them. The section on 5G security cited Chinese telecom giant Huawei's threat to the U.S. and other countries. The Trump administration labeled Huawei as a national security threat due to the company's deep connections to the CCP. It has a history of violating sanctions and has been accused of carrying out cyber attacks and stealing trade secrets. The removal of these core issues from the website may signal the beginning of a new approach to China policy. President Biden's Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, says that President Trump was right to be tough on China, but he himself will cooperate with China if it benefits the U.S. Biden's pick for Treasury Secretary announces her plans for the U.S.-China trade deal. This as Beijing falls behind on its promises from Phase 1.
The Biden administration says it won't immediately lift Trump's tariffs on Chinese imports, adding that it would start a review of the trade deal soon. President Biden's pick for Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says the White House is closely monitoring how China carries out its Phase 1 commitments. This as China falls behind on its promises. The Trump administration signed the Phase 1 trade deal with China last year. The deal asks Beijing to buy $200 billion worth of U.S. goods. But a Washington think tank report shows China has met less than 60% of its purchase goal. Beijing was supposed to import over $170 billion in U.S. goods by the end of last year, but only brought in about $100 billion. In terms of farm products, China achieved just over 60% of its purchase commitment. Chinese imports of U.S. farm goods are an important part of the Phase 1 deal. That's because before the trade war, China was the largest market for U.S. agriculture. U.S. farmers were hit hard by Beijing's tariffs. Yellen says the Biden administration would have a, quote, comprehensive review of all aspects of the Trump administration's trade policies toward China. She adds this includes looking into how Beijing has lived up to its Phase 1 promises. She also says the White House needs a different approach to put meaningful pressure on China. Trump often used tariffs to pressure China to buy more U.S. goods. He said the U.S. buys more from China than China buys from the U.S. and accused Chinese companies of stealing American intellectual property. Trump said before he would use U.S. tariffs as a bargaining chip for the Phase 2 deal. But because of Beijing's handling of the virus, he was hesitant to push for a Phase 2 deal.
J.P. Morgan says the U.S. ban on investing in a number of Chinese firms could trigger hefty outflows and affect as much as $60 billion worth of bonds. The Trump administration issued an order last year banning Americans from investing in Chinese firms with ties to its military. Currently, over 40 companies are on that list, and the Treasury Department is set to release a full list of their subsidiaries. ChemChina is one of the companies most affected. After Trump's order, investors were forced to sell $1 billion worth of securities. And J.P. Morgan estimates investors could pull another $1.3 billion out of the firm. Another one is CNOOC. It has nearly $20 billion of dollar-denominated debt, and $3.5 billion could be affected. President Biden hasn't spelled out any plans regarding the Trump order, but he could easily revoke it. U.S. President Joe Biden agrees the Chinese regime has committed genocide and crimes against humanity against Uyghur Muslims in the country's Xinjiang region. That's according to what a spokesperson for Biden's National Security Council told the Washington Examiner. The same designation was made by the Trump administration a day before Biden's inauguration. The statement cited China's detention of 1 million Uyghurs and other ethnic or religious minorities in that region, and determined that Beijing subjected them to forced labor, forced sterilization, and torture. Before Adolf Hitler launched his genocide against Jews in Europe, he needed a way to convince the public. That's why he started the propaganda ministry, to pump out anti-Semitic messages and make people think the atrocities of the Holocaust were acceptable responses to the so-called Jewish problem. Authoritarian regimes from other parts of the world took note. Back in January 2001, the CCP had already been suppressing a spiritual meditation system called Falun Gong for several months. But the general public wasn't too keen on Beijing's efforts. In fact, Time magazine reported that many Chinese people felt the crackdown had gone too far and that Falun Gong posed no real threat. That was the trend of public opinion until January 23, 2001. On that day, the nation was shocked to see 5 people set themselves on fire at Beijing's Tiananmen Square. The CCP claims these people were Falun Gong practitioners. Chinese state media made a 20-minute-long documentary about it immediately after the event. Flyers were even distributed around residential buildings, urging people to watch the program. The segment was heavily broadcasted across China in the following year. Nearly every single media in China reported on it. The incident sparked a quick shift in public opinion.
That was used in a propaganda blitz to show the Chinese people just how quote-unquote evil Falun Gong was. Look, people are burning themselves. Isn't this terrible? And the images were so horrific, the narrative so sort of twisted, that really turned the tide inside China.
But soon, some started asking questions, like why would Falun Gong practitioners kill themselves when the spiritual practice expressly prohibits killing and suicide in its books? And why, when a Washington Post reporter visited one of the victims' hometown, neighbors said no one had ever seen her practice Falun Gong. The state media program also claims one 12-year-old victim underwent tracheotomy. It's a procedure that surgically implants a tube into a patient's throat to aid breathing. But the girl was filmed just days later talking loudly. Despite being a burn victim and vulnerable to infection, the girl was interviewed while exposed to the air. Neither the nurse nor the reporter wore protective gear while near her. Other claims also appear to not add up. Chinese state media says the footage of the alleged self-immolation comes from surveillance cameras, while close-up shots were taken by reporters from the Associated Press, AFP, and CNN. But AP and AFP said none of their reporters were at Tiananmen Square at the time. CNN crew members were there, though their cameraman was arrested almost immediately after the incident began. A CNN producer who was on the scene that day said they were too far away to get close-up footage. Then on August 14, 2001, an NGO at an UN meeting made a formal statement. Reading, quote, "The Chinese regime points to a supposed self-immolation incident in Tiananmen Square on January 23, 2001, as proof to slander Falun Gong." It continued to say the organization had obtained video of that incident, which in their view proved the event was staged by the regime. Other organizations, including Reporters Without Borders and Amnesty International, also acknowledged errors in the Chinese regime's narrative. But the damage was already done. For many Chinese people, the persecution of Falun Gong appears justified. The number of detained Falun Gong practitioners reportedly shot up following the propaganda campaign. An U.S. aircraft carrier group has entered the South China Sea. This as rising tension between Communist China and Taiwan causes concern from Washington.
A U.S. aircraft carrier group entered the South China Sea on Saturday. Meanwhile, the CCP is also sending its warplanes into Taiwan's airspace. Tensions between Communist China and Taiwan are raising concern for the new administration, just days after President Biden's inauguration. The new administration says its commitment to Taiwan is rock solid. The U.S. military says its carriers were conducting routine operations to, quote, ensure freedom of the seas. On the same day U.S. carriers entered the South China Sea, Taiwan reported a large number of People's Liberation Army, or PLA, bombers and fighter jets intruding into its airspace. It reported even more PLA jets on Sunday. The CCP claims Democratic Taiwan as its own territory and increased military activity near Taiwan in the past months. But tensions escalated this past weekend. The CCP sent out fighters and bombers rather than reconnaissance aircraft. In the past, reconnaissance aircraft were more common. On Saturday, the Biden administration urged the CCP to stop pressuring Taiwan. It also reaffirmed its commitment to Taiwan and its desire to deepen ties. Then on Monday, the CCP's foreign ministry urged the U.S. to deal with Taiwan cautiously and abide by what it calls the One China policy. The U.S. cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan, officially known as the Republic of China, in 1979. It then set up diplomatic relations with Communist China. Since then, Beijing has required the U.S. to abide by its One China policy. The policy alleges there can only be one government representing China.
And at the India-China border, Indian and Chinese troops tussled in minor face-off last week at a disputed stretch of their shared border. That's according to the Indian Army. The fight broke out in the eastern Himalayas. The area is located thousands of miles away from India's Ladakh region, where the China-India military crisis began last year. It started last year with a border skirmish that left 20 Indian soldiers and an unspecified number of Chinese troops dead. Since then, both countries have bolstered forces all along and over 2,000 miles of border. China's foreign ministry says authorities have nothing to offer on the incident, but urge India to exercise restraint. The China-India border dispute has been in effect since the nations were at war in the 60s. Both lay claim to thousands of miles of overlapping territory. Outside the battlefield, India also appears to be taking a hardline stance towards something else: TikTok. The country's government is permanently banning 59 mobile applications made by Chinese developers, including video sharing platform TikTok. The perma-ban comes after a temporary one issued several months ago as a result of the border crisis with China. The original statement called the apps harmful to India's sovereignty, integrity, defense, and public order. Other apps under the ban include China's Twitter equivalent, Weibo, social media messenger WeChat, and other platforms like Club Factory, Likee, and Baidu. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow. Hi, we're happy to announce that you can also catch us on cable TV now. Millions of households already choose us as one of their trusted news sources, and you can too. You can watch us in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, and many other cities as well. And if your system doesn't carry NTD yet, you can just give them a quick call and request NTD on your cable provider. Thank you for watching. See you next time.